Hello, everybody. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Rocket Mortgage Data Dive Show. We have a lot to get into, a lot of prior leaderboards to check, figure out which metrics and filters we think we want to focus on this week for the Rocket Mortgage. Who is that going to lead us to in terms of our outright wagers, who we want to focus on in DFS, all of that good stuff. So let's not waste any time. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from fantasynational.com. It is the best tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf gambler and a much better golf DFS player. Go check them out. It is simply well worth your investment. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my Twitter and Instagram, where I posted some research earlier today regarding the Rocket Mortgage and Detroit Golf Club, how it has historically been one of the easier tournaments on the PGA Tour. So if you want to see the summary of the research that I have found this week, then give me a follow over at Twitter or Instagram, your preferred social media site. Twitter is also where I place my betting cards on the PGA Tour. That will be no different this week. That'll come out Wednesday evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see my betting card week after week for the PGA Tour, give me a follow over at Twitter. And then Twitter is also where I post my daily baseball content. A quick hitting 3 up, 3 down, 3 players I think will accrue their value, 3 players I don't. So if you want to see some quick hitting baseball content, give me a follow over at Twitter as well. Lastly, for the social media, Gabe's Twitter is in the description as well. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. I highly recommend you give Gabe a follow and subscribe to his article. It's a very good read and a great way to start your week in terms of research and preparation. So give Gabe a follow and subscribe to The Fringe. And then finally, we are live. Chat's open. I want to hear from you all. Who are you all focused on so far this week for the Rocket Mortgage? Have you placed any wagers? Who are your early pivots and leans? Where do you think the final score is going to end up in terms of for the winner? Normally they have been around minus 23, 24, 25 or so. So very, very low scoring here at Detroit Golf Club. Were you surprised at the tournament favorite? All of that good stuff. Want to hear from you all in chat. So jump in there with any comments or questions that you have. So let's dig into the weeds of the data for the 2023 Rocket Mortgage. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Monday evening, as soon as I figure out which page view I want to look at. We're going to start over at Windfinder very, very quickly. Looks like they are getting some rain tonight. I can't confirm that. I am not in Detroit, but at least from Windfinder, it looks like they are getting some wind and some rain. So it could soften the course up. Looks like throughout the beginning portion of the week, they are going to have some cooler temperatures, a lot of wind. But by the time the tournament rolls around, not a whole lot of wind. And of course, we will update this Wednesday evening at the beginning of the DFS Tactics show, but at least Thursday and Friday, not a whole lot of wind. Perhaps some rain in the forecast. And of course, we'll look at the super forecast Wednesday evening as well. And then for the weekend, looks pretty optimal. Not a whole lot of wind, highs in the mid 80s. Just looks like a great weekend for golf. Perhaps a little bit of some rain in the forecast Thursday night and Friday night, but we'll update that come Wednesday evening. So nothing to do with wind tonight in terms of looking at metrics and using the wind filter and all that. So we're going to jump straight to Fantasy National. And as a quick review on a couple of things, you see I have 4 specific golf courses highlighted here. These are the 3 continuous events and courses that have Bent and Poa annua on the PGA Tour, plus Oakdale, which hosted the Canadian Open this year. And while it's not a continuous course, the Canadian Open was earlier this month. So definitely want to include that in our sample size here. And the Travelers is in the database So this will be updated or as of this past weekend. Your top putters on Bent and Poa Anna going back to 2019, and we saw at least last night in the historical conditions that every single round had been fast. Don't think I'm going to include that, only because the sample size will get way too small in that case. So we're just going to look at Bent and Poa Anna greens and the putters on those. However, if you want to get very, very specific, you would want to include the fast speed filter. But your top putters on Bent and Poa Anna going back to 2019: Bryce Garnett, Zach Blair, Bo Hostler, Harris English, Mark Hubbard, Adam Long, Adam Hadwin, Chesson Hadley, Brian Stewart, Justin Lauer, Saying You'll Know, and Brant Snedeker. And before we get too much further into the show, there have been 2 more field changes that I have seen in addition to the Monday qualifiers. So last night I had mentioned that Andrew Putnam had withdrawn. 2 more as of today. Patrick Rogers and Hayden Buckley are not playing this week at the Rocket Mortgage. So those 3 players, Andrew Putnam, Patrick Rogers, and Hayden Buckley, have withdrawn. But there's a look at your top putters on Bent and Poa Anna surfaces. While I have the 2019 timeline, let's look at some Don Ross designs. This is a Don Ross design this week at Detroit Golf Club. We're going to look at all courses. And the 2 prominent courses on the PGA Tour that are Don Ross designs, of course, East Lake, which only 30 make at the end of the year, so not a whole lot of sample size from there. Of course, Detroit Golf Club, and Sedgefield, the Wyndham, which is usually the last PGA Tour event before the playoffs, so a lot of times a lot of players will enter that to secure their playoff status or to increase the chances against the East Lake and so on. Good evening, Richard. Haven't seen you in a while. How many rounds do you look at in your model? Feel like you are attempting to look at recent form from the last 12, 24, 36 rounds and plug in all course specific things as green type. That's what I used to do when I first started a couple of years ago. Now I have really gotten to the point where I am looking at a specific time frame, say the beginning of 2019, and however many rounds a player has in that regard would be the answer to that. Because the reason why I don't like using, or I changed to using this time frame instead of using the last 24 or the last 36, a player might have 24 rounds in the past 3 months, whereas another player in that same field, their 24 rounds could have been, as far back as 2 years ago, depending on, injuries or whatnot, especially with LIV. So I've enjoyed, I've felt more comfortable using the time frame and making sure I go back enough to have enough rounds in my data size. But you're right, that is a concern whenever you're starting to filter and using some of these specific filters, that you don't want bad data. And 2019 is the furthest I will go back. I don't go any further back than 5 years because golfers change, courses change, golfers change caddies, all of that kind of stuff. So you don't want to go so far back that the data becomes moot or insignificant. But you want to go, make sure you go far enough back. Like, for example, we are on the Don Ross filter here, and there are a few players that have just not played Don Ross courses, and there aren't many of them. So that's why I want to go back all the way to 2019. If we only went back to, say, the last 24, we're going to lose quite a few of Sung Jae's rounds. You're going to lose a few of Scott Stallings and Hideki. So that's why I've been defaulting to using the time frame instead of just last 24, last 36. But appreciate the comment. Thanks for jumping in chat. Haven't seen you in a while. Hope things are well and that you are ready to take advantage of the Rocket Mortgage, just like many of the professionals will, shooting very, very low scores. Hopefully we'll have the correct lineups and wagers for this week at the Rocket Mortgage. So your top performers on Don Ross Designs, going back to 2019, and 2019 is actually a pretty convenient time frame for this week, as the Rocket Mortgage began in 2019. So your top performers on Don Ross Designs: Tom Kim, Chris Kirk, Taylor Moore, Cam Davis, Taylor Pendrith, Sung Jae, Troy Merritt, Brian Stewart, Ben On, and Tony Finau are your top 10 in terms of performance, total performance on Don Ross Designs. And of course, the big three courses: East Lake, Sedgefield, which is the host of the Wyndham, and of course, Detroit Golf Club, where we are this week. Last thing that we can take a look at in terms of in totality, we're going to look at easy scoring to par, as 14 of the 16 rounds here at Detroit Golf Club have been labeled as easy. And to your point, Richard, if we were if we went all the way back to 2019 in terms of easy scoring relative to par, we'd have as many as 160 rounds. There's no way I want to include that many rounds in a sample size. So this is a situation where I will bring in the time frame. I believe I've been going to 2021. We'll take a look and see how many rounds this is. Looks upwards, you got 71. That's still quite a few. 86, that's a lot. Not sure I'm comfortable with that many, but the majority of our players have at least 15, which is good. If I go to 2022, I wonder how much that cuts it. And this is where, if you remember at Fantasy National, you are going to be able to have the capability to look at whatever time frame that you want, and that's why Fantasy National is such a powerful tool. Looks like most players have at least 12 rounds. We've got 52 from Grayson Sigg, so I think 2022 is going to be enough of a time frame, even though it's only 18 months. I think it's enough rounds and enough data size here that we can get a good estimation at who plays easy rounds well. So in the past 18 months, your top performers, when a round has been easy, have been Tom Kim, Tony Finau, Tom Hoge, Hideki, Justin Thomas, Alex Smalley, Brian Harmon, Max Homa, JJ Spawn, and Thomas Detry. Again, skipping Andrew Putnam, he has withdrawn. So a little bit of overlap here between Don Ross and easy courses. Tom Kim, top 10 in both. I believe Tony Finau was top 10 for Don Ross. He is number 2 when rounds are easy. Hideki, don't think Spawn was up there. So a little bit of overlap here in terms of Don Ross and easy, most notably Tom Kim and I think Tony Finau. Tom Hoge really rises. Of course, his win last year at Pebble Beach, generally fairly easy. Not difficult. If anything, it'll be average, but can play easy. Alex Smalley generally plays easy. Andrew Putnam really plays easy rounds well, but he is withdrawn, as I mentioned. So there's a look at a little bit of review from last night, especially in this kind of total or big picture view for Don Ross, easy courses, and the putting. Let's take a look at a couple of specific things here very, very quickly. We are going to bring this in even closer. We're going to look at the last calendar year, last 6 months or so. As you see, we have even bigger sample size in terms of the most rounds when we look at just the calendar year with no filters as opposed to easy rounds and 18 months. So in this calendar year, your top strokes gained approach players in the field this week: Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa, Ricky Fowler, Hideki, Tom Kim, Tom Hoge, Nate Lashley, Mark Hubbard, Sepp Straka, and Max Homa. We looked at the putting, and we saw last night briefly in the Microsoft Excel portion of the show, and we'll really see it tonight, off the tee, pretty mitigated in importance, around the green, pretty mitigated in importance. So that's going to do it for the strokes gained page view in Fantasy National. Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of these prior leaderboards. We'll look at the strokes gained for 2022 last year when Tony Finau won. Highlights top 16 here just due to ties. You see only one player was negative in terms of off the tee, and it wasn't by much, but some of these numbers really aren't all that drastically high. Now, yes, Tony Finau 5.8, Cam Young 5.3, but that is their game. They are very elite off the tee anyway. You see every single player inside the top 9 was positive in putting, so that's why we are going to have a significant portion of the mixed condition model be putting. If we were to sort on these, again, your leader in off the tee was a middling to clunker, however you define a T49. Your winner, runner-up, top 10. So off the tee did matter a little bit last year. Approach, much more correlating, with the exception of Matt Kuchar's miscut. He did not make a single putt last year, seemingly, but was very good with his irons. But, top 10, top 25, top 10, runner-up, winner, top 10 are your 6 best strokes gained approach players from last year. Putting, not necessarily as direct correlation, but what you don't have are missed cuts up here. If you are putting well, especially on bent and Poa annua, you are going to have some success. We'll take a quick look at 2021 again, or just to drive a few points home. Looks like this is the top 20 due to ties, so very convenient cutoff here. You see many more players were negative in terms of off the tee in 2021. A lot of these numbers aren't that high, but again, there's quite a few more players that ended up being negative in terms of off the tee related to the field. Only one player negative in strokes gained approach, only 2 negative in putting. If we were to sort, you see much less correlating in 2021 for off the tee. You've got a high missed cut in Bryson, clunker of a made cut, a middling finish. Approach, much more correlating. Hopefully it makes a lot of sense whenever you see these numbers here. You don't have a missed cut for a while. You don't have that 67th or whatever. 67th here and off the tee. Hey, Darnell, evening. Thanks for jumping in chat. Didn't see you last week for the Traveler, so I will have to give you a little bit of grief in the sense that Fitzpatrick did outperform Tyrrell Hatton at the U.S. Open. So I one-upped you on that one slightly. Tyrrell Hatton played fairly well, but I got you there on Fitzpatrick. But thanks for jumping in chat. Hopefully you had a good Travelers. Much better than mine. Mine was an unmitigated disaster. It was just complete and utter trash. And hopefully we are ready for the Rocket Mortgage and going to build some momentum. This week. Yep, slight. Yeah, Tyrrell Hatton played much better than I thought, and a lot of the reason why I was a little off of Hatton was his high ownership. Make a super chat. Well, I would love to. I believe if I have the ability, I haven't looked into it. but I would think I would need some more subscribers to do that. It is certainly something that I would like to do, have the capability to do, but I would think would need some more subscribers to do that. And plus, I enjoy the interaction with you all. I really do. So coming back to looking at the Rocket Mortgage in terms of strokes gained, you see the off the tee, pretty bad. Iron play, solid. Maybe not direct correlation. I'll let you know. I'll hit you up on social media. I'll get you on Twitter or whatever. How's the baseball going? I've really been lax on doing my baseball content. It's not that I haven't wanted to. I've just been very busy. My own baseball season has started, which takes up quite a bit of time. And then I put in a lot of effort into the Travelers, and all for naught, as it was a really bad week last week. Not doing well tonight. Well, those things happen, as such as it is. I know there was a lot of weather affecting or potentially affecting some games, so hopefully you were able to avoid any weather mishaps there. Unless Seattle hits them. Who are they playing? Like I said, I've been so busy I haven't even been able to keep up. But Seattle's been playing fairly well lately. And then lastly, in terms of strokes gained, look at putting. You see some very strong correlation here. Now your winner, a little further down, Cam Davis. He didn't put the extreme ever living daylights out of it, but still solid. But a very big correlation here in 2021 in terms of strokes gained. But now let's get into some more specifics, shall we? Let's first look at some driving. And last night in the Microsoft Excel portion, we saw that driving distance was a pretty big deal in terms of percent against the average full field course. And while that makes a little bit of sense, when we look at the course breakdown in that distance, players have driver in their hand at this course because the fairways are generally pretty easy to hit. Wide fairways, the rough is long, but it's not penal. It's not difficult to get out of. So players really aren't concerned, especially with the forgiving fairway. So they just take driver on a lot of holes. There's not a lot of forced layups. So with that, we saw that fairways were fairly mitigated, and we saw that driving distance was pretty important for the players that finished in the top 30. So looking at the players that at least were in the top 16 last year, we see Tony Finau. Even though he is pretty long, he wasn't terribly long in relation to the field last year. Still a little positive, but not by much. Cantlay was very long. Cam Young always going to be very long. Scott Stallings, in fact, was very long. But pretty good size numbers here in terms of driving distance. Whereas in the fairways, you got quite a few players that were pretty poor in terms of fairways gained. Wyndham Clark, Matt Wallace, Siwoo, Cam Davis, not great. That was a donkey. CT Pan definitely not getting played. I know that. I will be the first to admit that I was very high on CT Pan last week. That did not work out in my favor. I was, he had shown that he did not like that course, but I chose to go with the analytics as opposed to the prior course form. Perhaps there's just something about TPC River Highlands that he just doesn't like, because he has been atrocious there. So the signs were there. I ignored it, went with the analytics, and that utterly backfired. 2022's Rocket Mortgage, we'll sort on distance. You got a miscut from Brandon Matthews, a little bit high up here, but look at someone like Kevin Tway, who is never long generally on tour. He even was positive in terms of driving distance last year at the Rocket Mortgage. it is a benefit. It does not preclude you from winning or performing well at the Rocket Mortgage, but it certainly does help. So I'm going to have some driving distance in my mixed condition model. And if we sort on the fairways, you got some pretty big numbers here, including your winner, who was third. But the leader in fairways was a clunker. Bryce Garnett, pretty high up here, didn't perform well. A lot more missed cuts and middling finishes in these fairways. And even though you do have some high numbers in greens, again, these greens are small, but they're so easy to hit that there's not a lot to gain in terms of greens in regulation gained. This course is just very, very easy. So instead, I think we're going to be focused more so on the scoring aspect and making sure players can go low. But we'll take a look at 2021 quickly as well, and the driving statistics here. Again, the top 20, just convenient for ties. Many, many more players negative in terms of driving distance and in fairways. 2021 just off the tee was not a big factor, and that's generally how it is here at Detroit Golf Club. And these greens in regulation numbers, 9 is a good number, but last year there was a 14, there was a 12, and 11. And look at these performances, a middling the clunker. Sure, you have some elite finishes, top 10, top 15, or a few top 15s there, but more clunkers here. Greens just aren't the biggest deal in the world here at Detroit Golf Club. If anything, we're going to be looking at driving distance, but I'm not going to put a whole lot of emphasis into it at all, as off the tee really kind of doesn't matter here, and we'll see that later on, especially in Microsoft Excel. So I'm going to get this ready for the scoring, where we're going to take a long look. But let's move to the field this year, and we'll take a look at a couple of different things. We're definitely not going to look at scrambling either, as players are much more successful scrambling here at Detroit Golf Club than they are at the average tour event as well. So not a whole lot to gain in terms of greens, scrambling, even the driving. Not a whole lot to gain there. And we see, off the tee and around the green, fairly close to each other for the top 10s, top 5s. We went through this quite a bit last night, but just as a quick recap, off the tee and around the green, yes, that's exactly what it is. You've got to score. A bogey's not going to hurt you every once in a while. You've just got to go and get your birdies. Go and get your birdies. Now, off the tee did matter a little bit for the winners, but you've seen the approach just hasn't been a big deal at all much either. So for the players in the field this week, your top driving distance players, actually, you know what? I am going to use the easy course filter, because I think that is going to be pretty appropriate for a lot of the things we're looking at. Again, 14 of the 16 rounds historically at Detroit Golf Club have been labeled easy. So your top driving distance players, when a round has been easy in the past 18 months, Brandon Matthews, Ben On, Cam Champ, Joseph Bramlett, Taylor Pendrith, Luke List, Callum Tarrant, Matty Schmid, Trevor Cohn, and Brent Grant. The only reason that I think it might, while I'm favoring the distance over the fairways, it might be overrated in terms of you don't want to put a whole lot of emphasis into it. Not a ton. I'm going to have to change the vision for you very, very quickly. But for the Rocket Mortgage, distance is 60% more important than the average full field course. It's not nothing. Again, I think this is slightly misleading. If anything, I want to favor the driving distance over the fairways. Yes, that's exactly why why I would want to look at distance, because the fairways are forgiving, Darnell. So if the fairways are indeed easy to hit, then give me the guys, because everyone's going to have driver in their hand, because the rough, even though it's long, it's not hard to play out of, so guys aren't afraid to go into the rough. So if everyone's going to have driver in their hand, give me the guys that are going to be closer to the hole after their first shot more times than not. Again, I'm not going to have a whole lot of emphasis here, but I do want to favor the distance players over the fairways. Oh yeah, no, putting is going to be probably the second most important part or biggest part of my mixed condition model. Absolutely, you're not wrong there. I'm just saying in terms of when looking at driving players or driving statistics, I am going to want to focus on the distance players versus the fairway finders, but it's not going to be a big part of my mixed condition model. All right, let me go back to Fantasy National. There's our top driving distance players when a round is easy. I think that's about the only way I would want to look at driving distance, because we know this is going to be easy. I suppose we can look at when fairways are easy to hit, but the reason why I am even a little bit cautious with that filter is that these historic conditions show there have been rounds where technically the fairways were difficult to hit, mostly because the players didn't care. That would be my guess, but I can't confirm that. So that's why I don't want to put a lot of emphasis or any emphasis on looking at driving distance when fairways are easy to hit. Like, that's not going to be the filter that I use in my mixed condition model. But we can take a look at it. I don't think there's any harm in doing it. But the reason why I don't want to use any emphasis is because not every single round has been easy. So your top driving distance players when fairways are easy to hit: Joseph Bramlett, Trey Mullinax, Brandon Matthews, Callum Tarrant, Luke List, Ben On, Cameron Champ, Kevin Tway, Matty Schmid, and Cam Davis. So a lot of overlap here between the distance when it's easy to par, distance when fairways are easy to hit, distance in general. Your Joseph Bramletts, your Brandon Matthews, Luke List, Cam Champ, Matty Schmid. These players are going to pop anytime distance is anywhere a factor. All right, so with that, I'm going to prep this again in preparation for the next set of metrics we want to look at. We're going to take a long look at some scoring. And Eagles, they're not non-existent here. But I don't think it's wise to look at Eagles alone. I think we're going to be looking at birdies or better, because even though there is a full complement of 4 par 5s, you do have a true 3-shot par 5 here at Detroit Golf Club. It only yields an eagle at 0.7% of the time, so not a great eagle chance. 2%, 2%, and 2.5%. Decent, but again, nothing extraordinary like 5% or 6.5%. I know there have been some par 5s that yield an eagle at 8%. Nothing to that effect. So eagles will happen, but I don't think they happen enough to look at eagles gained by themselves. Instead, this is going to be, if it's not putting, it's going to be birdies or better gained as the most important part of this mixed condition model this week. You look at these players favoring the birdies. Huge emphasis in the birdies gained last year. Humongous birdies. You have to come down to Matt Wallace before you find a player that is more bogey avoidance than birdies gained. And even after him, you go 1, 2, 3. You have to come all the way down to Cam Davis before you hit another bogey. So of the top 16 players last year, 14 of them were more adept that week at birdies gained than bogeys avoided. I mean, huge numbers here. 11.4, 10.4, 8.4. And you see that basically the direct correlation. Second, first, fifth, second, eighth, second, sixth. I mean, there's essentially your top 10 in order. Or in some combination thereof. Siwoo Kim does creep up here, who top 15. Whereas if you go to the bogeys avoided, it's important. I mean, your winner led in the category, but you got a 57th up here. You've got several, top 25s. Again, good performances, but they're not the single-digit elite finishes like the birdies were. And just to really drive this point home, I'll show you 2021's birdies and bogeys gained. And again, Cam Davis, much more in the birdies gained. Now, it's surprising to see Joaquin Niemann more bogeys avoided, but Merritt, Lee Biota, pretty even, but Hagee still slightly favoring the birdies. Bubba, Kevin Kisner, Sung Jae, Mark Anderson, all of these guys are in the birdies gained. 6th, 1st, 2nd, 8th, 8th. Whereas if you sort on the bogeys avoided, again, important, but you have a 14th up here, a 14th, 12th, 14th. You don't have your double-digit finishes as high as you did in the birdies gained. So very, very clearly we're going to be focused on scoring, and I always prefer to combine a scoring metric like birdies gained, birdies are better gained, bogeys avoided, with the scoring filter, easy to par, difficult to par. Well, we are at Detroit Golf Club. It is easy. So your top birdies or better gained players when a round has been easy in the past 18 months: Justin Thomas, Tony Finau, Tom Kim, Ryan Palmer, Tom Hoge, Davis Riley, Hideki, Max Homa, Tyler Duncan, and Akshay Bhatia. There's your top 10 in terms of birdies or better gained when a round is easy. I don't think it's erroneous to look at opportunities, but I'm definitely going to put all of my attention into birdies or better gained, but we can look at some opportunities as well. Your top opportunities gained players when a round has been easy: Justin Thomas, Tom Hoge, Alex Smalley, Nate Lashley, your 2019 champion, Colin Morikawa, Hideki, Ryan Palmer, Austin Smotherman, Sung Jae, Tom Kim, and Trey Mullinax. So quite a bit of overlap again here between birdies are better and opportunities when a round's easy. Top 10, Justin Thomas is number 1 in both. Tom Hoge's top 5 in both. Hideki's top 10 in both. Ryan Palmer's top 10 in both. Tom Kim's top 10 in both. So those are some names to really focus on as you move forward in your week, whether that's in outrights, your DFS, things of that nature. It's also probably going to be worth looking at, although it's not going to end up in my final mixed condition model. Let's take a look at some performance on Don Ross courses. This is a Don Ross design. Don Ross designs generally play fairly similar. These greens are just like the other Don Ross designs on the PGA Tour, especially Sedgefield. Those greens are very sloped from back to front. The same is true here at Detroit Golf Club. So your top birdies or better gained players on Don Ross designs have been Tom Kim, Taylor Moore, Brian Stewart, Cam Davis, Webb Simpson, Stephan Jaeger, Justin Thomas, Taylor Pendrith, Sung Jae, and Tony Finau. And then if you want to look at opportunities on Don Ross designs, Adam Svensson, Taylor Moore, Jason Duffner, Keegan, Charlie Hoffman, Hideki, Taylor Pendrith, Lucas Glover, Ches Reavie, Davis Riley, and Cameron Percy. So this is probably going to be the biggest part of my mixed condition model. If it's not first, it's second behind putting. It's one of those two, and I'll make my mixed condition model tomorrow and into Wednesday. But definitely some of the biggest emphasis this week is on birdies or better, and I'm going to be using the filter easy to par. You've just got to go low here. You have to go low. Winning scores have been 23, 25. I believe Cam Davis was 18, and that's because the wind really picked up in the beginning part of the tournament. But all of the other years have yielded some ridiculously low scores. 26 last year from Finau. Bryson shoots 23. Nate Lashley went 25. Just, you've got to get birdies in bunches at Detroit Golf Club. All right, let's move on to proximity. And quick refresher, the majority of approach shots here at Detroit Golf Club do come from 200 plus, but they're actually fewer than the average tour course. The majority of approach shots compared to the average tour event is 75 to 100 and 100 to 125. Really kind of in this range, these wedges, because you have quite a few holes that are 350 to 4 par 4s, and you do have the true 3-shot par 5. And you have a few short par 4s as well from 400 to 450. So generally a lot of your wedges in your hands. So let's see if that is indeed an indicator of upper leaderboard success. So we'll look at last year. Right off the bat, well, I mean, again, the most were in these three ranges. Maybe 75 to 100. Like Jaeger was horrible at that range. Merritt was pretty bad, but otherwise you had some decent numbers in here. But nothing really stands out except for maybe the 150 to 175, and that's not a range we were looking at. If we sort, like some decent correlation here on total procs, except for Brian Stewart, who missed the cut. Not a lot here. 100 to 125, not a lot here. 125 to 150. This has been fairly, the strongest except for Schwab. This is why I'm always quick to mention this. Proximity is just my least favored statistic. It's the hardest statistic for me as an analyst. I can't narrow down proximity. Top 20 from 2021. 75 to 100 does look a lot stronger in 2021. Your winner was negative from that range. If we sort on it, yeah, fairly decent except for Gary Woodland. Fairly decent up here. Total procs, okay, I guess. What do you think in the community? Jump in chat or put it in the comments. What range, if any, do you think is most important here at Detroit Golf Club? Because I'm not seeing a whole lot that would signify that it is mandatory to look at a specific range here. I mean, even the 200 plus, not a whole lot that I'm seeing here. So in terms of this year's field, I'll bring this to 2023. So this calendar year, I'll remove the filter. I guess we'll just do the 3 wedge distances, but I don't have a lot of confidence in it. So your top proximity players from 75 to 100, Max Homa, Chris Kirk, Ryan Armour, Austin Cook, Luke Donald, Brendan Todd, Troy Merritt, Ben Martin, Russell Knox, Hideki, and Trevor Werblio. 100 to 125, Morikawa, Kirk, Hoffman, Justin Thomas, Kazire, Davis Riley, Harry Hall, Carl Yuan, Harry Higgs, and Jimmy Walker. And then finally the 125 to 150, Keegan, Chris Kirk, Tom Kim, Webb Simpson, Max Homa, Charlie Hoffman, Saying You'll Know, Kadira, Morikawa, and Højgaard. Of the ranges we are looking at specifically, the 3 wedge ranges, Chris Kirk is first or second in all 3. Max Homa is first and 5th. Now, he's been very, very poor from 100 to 125, but he has been elite at 2 of the 3. Tom Kim has been elite at 2 of the 3. Colin Morikawa has been good, or elite at 2 and mediocre at the other. Hideki, somebody else to keep an eye on, 10th, 11th, and 25th, pretty solid. So, Charlie Hoffman, 36th, 3rd, and 6th. Very, very strong there. Probably second best, maybe third best, depending on how you rate Hoffman and Matsuyama. But clearly Chris Kirk's been the best with the wedge proximities. All right, let's move very quickly to pars 3s, 4s, and 5s, as we have quite a bit to still that we need to get to. Par 3s, we saw last night in graphical form in Microsoft Excel. They're not a big deal. 0.7 from your winner last year. There's the top 16. Only 3 negative, but the highest was a 4.7 and did not lead to a lot of success. Just not a whole lot here. If there was a range, surprisingly, it was the 200 to 225. Okay, I guess. Hubbard's hurting that. If you take out Hubbard, that's some decent correlation there. Let's see. You have 2 that measure to this range. Not a whole lot of correlation there at all. You have 1 here and 1 here. I don't see a whole lot there. If we do anything with par 3s, it'll just be total par 3s. But again, not very important for your upper leaderboard success. Look at 2021. Again, only a 1.5. 4.5 looks to be the highest. It is. A little bit more correlating in terms of 2021's success, but 4.5 is just not a big number at all. 2.6, 2.4, not much there. 3. So if anything, we're looking at just par 3s, and it's not going to be much of an emphasis at all. So your top par 3 performers this calendar year: Max Homa, Ricky, Christian Bezuidenhout, Sam Ryder, Adam Schenk, Ben Griffin, Nate Lashley, Doug Gim, Colin Morikawa, Nikolai Højgaard, and Robbie Shelton. Moving to par 4s, you see, Tony Finau played them very, very well. Cantley. I think 2022 is a bit of an outlier in the sense that 350 to 4 wasn't important. Generally, I believe it is. If we sort on par 4s, you can see 1st, 2nd, 8th, 7th, 2nd, 10th, 30th, 8th. It's important. 350 to 4, other than Keegan, you got some very strong correlation here. 450 to 5, extremely correlating up top. Then kind of cools off a little bit. Checking 2021 par 4s. Cameron Davis did not play these well at all. But you see again, sorted on par 4s, 2nd, 8th, 8th, 12th, 350 to 4. Yeah, there we go. 6.2 from Kisner. You got an 8th, a 2nd, a top 15. Middling from Snedeker. Top 5, top 10, top 15, runner-up, top 10, top 10. Huge amounts of correlation in the 350 to 4. Cameron Davis was much better at the 450 to 5s, but you also had a miscut from Martin Laird, very high up. It's the 350 to 4 that I believe is the most important range. But you also need to look at the 450 to 5s as well. So your top par 4 performers in general this calendar year: Tony Finau, Max Homa, Hideki, Thomas Detry, Chris Kirk, Ricky, Keegan Bradley, Taylor Moore, Ben Martin, and Aaron Rai. Your top par 4 performers from 350 to 4: Vincent Norman, Kramer Hickok, Harry Hall, Cody Gribble, Luke List, Alex Smalley, Alex Noren, Lonto Griffin, Brandon Wu, and Danny Willett. Whew, that's a list of names there. I believe we probably haven't mentioned 8 of those 10 through the night. But they are very good at 350 to 4 par 4s, which are prevalent here at Detroit Golf Club. And then your top par 4, 450 to 5 par 4 performers: Max Homa, Sam Stevens, Austin Eckroat, Ben On, Justin Thomas, Lee Hodges, Sam Ryder, Sung Jae, Stephan Jaeger, and Joseph Bramlett. Lastly, we'll move to par 5s, and these are going to have a decent amount of weight in the mixed condition model. Just again, very quickly looking at average strokes gained by hole by par 5s, outweighing the 4s, and then heavily outweighing the 3s. We move up the leaderboard: 5s, 4s. 3s look like they're catching up, but when you go to the winners, par 3s don't matter. Par 5s are where your winners are scoring and scoring well. So we want to put a decent amount of emphasis in par 5s this week. And just to look at some leaderboards here: 2nd, 1st, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th, just very strong. 3 of your par 5s measure 550 to 6, 1 from 600 to 650. So, yeah, 5.6 of your 5.3. So he was actually, your winner was negative 600 to 650. Hagee and Chappell kind of distorting the correlation there a little bit. If we go to 2021 par 5s, again sorted, winner led 6th, 14th, 25th. Now Bryson generally always going to play the par 5s well, but 550 to 6, your winner led in that category as well. So your top par 5 performers from 550 to 600 yards this calendar year: Ricky, Keegan Bradley, Colin Morikawa, Patton Kizzire, Ludwig Aberg, Tony Finau, Adam Long, Dylan Wu, Sung Jae, and Kevin Chappell. All right, that is a look at the Fantasy National portion of the show. We're going to be running over a little bit on time tonight, but I don't mind, as I love digging into the statistics. Let me bring up last year's mixed condition model just very, very quickly and show you how I fared in last year's, or at last year's Rocket Mortgage. Zoom in here for you all. So you see Tony Finau was my number 1 player. Fairly popular, but again, still going to take credit where credit's due. He was my number 1 player. He wins. Cameron Young and Patrick Cantlay high up here as well. I'll count Michael Kim as a miscut. I don't know if he withdrew before or during the tournament, but if we look at my top 20, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, crap. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players that missed the cut in my top 20. That's pretty high. That's not acceptable. That's pretty bad. Again, only really being saved by the fact that Finau was my number 1 player. Cameron Young and Patrick Cantlay had good performances. Cam Davis was good. Of course, I hit just humble, not so humble brag, hit Cameron Davis at 150 in 2021. So I've had some good success at the Rocket Mortgage. We're going to try to duplicate that. Let's sort on the leaderboard here very quickly and figure out how predictive these were. and you see the metrics that I used. So I had 20% birdies or better when it's easy. Makes a whole lot of sense, thinking about the same. Here's 15% I am getting back. But again, you see that I was really favoring the easy to par filter. 15% in putting. Now this is the incorrect filter. I was not in contact with Gabe at this point last year. So now with his direction, helping me know which courses have bent and poa annua, will be much more confident in this metric. So makes a lot of sense to have a lot of weight in putting. 10% 350 to 4 par 4s makes a lot of sense. 10% in the specific length of par 5s makes a lot of sense. 5 to putting on from 5 to 10 feet. I didn't look at any specific length of putting. Okay, interesting. I did have 5%, which I'll get back in moderate and windy conditions. It got a little bit windy last year, so I factored that in. Only 5% approach is mitigated here, so that makes a lot of sense. As you see, Darnell, I didn't have a lot of emphasis into it, but I did want to single out the players that had distance, only 5%, but I did want to see or favor those players. Then I had 5% proximity, which, oh crap, that's not the view you all need. There you go. So, not confident in this metric. I think that's probably 5% I'm going to get back as well. All right, let's figure out how predictive these were. We're going to look at the top. Yeah, let's just do the top 29, just due to ties, and see how predictive these were. The lower the number, the better. All right. So 5 to 10 feet, so you've got a couple others off here. All right, so you see strokes gained total, easy. Looks like it was the best. Oh, look, par 5s was the most predictive. So that's a good sign that we singled out the 550 to 6s again this year. Strokes gained total, again, I'm not going to use anything with strokes gained total in my mixed condition model, but if you're looking for a filter, definitely want to default to scoring easy relative to par. That is what this is. The putting did not perform well, or at least wasn't very predictive, but again, I was looking at just bent. That's incorrect. Now that we know which courses also have bent and poa annua, we'll be able to be much more confident in that. Birdies or better was fairly decent. This length of par 4s did not perform all that well in terms of predictive. This is the wind, so kind of hard to justify or say whether that's good or bad since this year doesn't look to be windy. Approach was okay. Distance and proximity were fairly mediocre. So it looks like we're on the right track. We fixed this filter. This, I bet, gets a lot better. We're going to be defaulting to using a whole lot of easy to par filters. Birdies are better. We'll look at that specific length of par 5. All right. I kind of like where we're at there, at least from last year and what we used. So let me resort this real quick because I will forget and it'll throw me for a loop. All right. Save that. Now we will go to the comparison course, and let's take a look at Detroit Golf Club and the Rocket Mortgage in terms of some specific raw data. You see the most important shot type at Detroit Golf Club is the putt. Just like it was at the Travelers last week. Most important shot type was putting and then the approach. Same thing here for Detroit Golf Club. And again, a bent and poa annua surface. So we're going to have the majority of the weight be in putting. We'll have a little bit in approach. off the tee has not been very consistent. You see 2 years where it's been a decent factor and 2 years where it wasn't a factor at all. So not going to take a whole lot from there. You see the driving distance actually has been somewhat a factor. It really is getting deflated by Nate Lashley's win. Again, over the long haul, I think distance will end up mattering eventually. Because these fairways are easy to hit, so every player is going to have driver in their hand. So I am going to favor the driving distance players. This greens and regulation number is actually fairly small, only a 3, whereas at the Travelers is a 3.21, 3.3 at the Memorial. We've seen numbers as high as 4 at the Wells Fargo. It's a pretty small number in terms of greens gained. Birdies gained, my goodness, that is a humongous number, 3.78. That might be the highest on tour. No, okay, the Barbasol, which is also a very easy tournament. So you can see just how comparatively the Rocket Mortgage is to some of these other events. Just birdies, 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 birdies galore. You got to go low here. You can accept a bogey every once in a while as long as you're getting your birdies. Par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Nothing to do with par 3s in terms of length. You see the one that looks like it's the most important is 200 to 225, but it's not even a third of the total of the par 3s. So it looks like we're just going to be looking at strokes gained par 3 and a very little amount at that. The par 4s, as we would expect. The 2 links that have 4 par 4s in their respective buckets are the ones commanding the most attention. So I don't know if we're going to split. If we split out the 350 to 4, it would make a whole lot of sense to split out the 450 to 5 as well, since they are so darn close. The issue is the 350 to 4 has been much more consistent over the 4 years. But the past 2 years, the 455 have really gained a lot of influence. So perhaps it's correct to split both of these out and perhaps lower the percentage in each of them. Say maybe 5% in each of these lengths and then 10% in par 4s. I'm spitballing, but something to that effect. Par 5s, however, we're going to have a pretty decent amount in 1.89. That's a pretty good sized number. Remember the par 3s were like a 1.3. And look, basically all of it is in this 550 to 6. Looks like 75% or so is in the 550 to 6. So that would mean that we just want to single out this length of par 5, which we did last year, and it turned out to be fairly predictive. So that's a good sign. Lastly, the numbers won't mean much. I'll give you show you a look at the raw numbers for the Rocket Mortgage in proximity. But to get a real gauge, we'll have to compare them. And 75 to 100 looks good. 100 to 125 looks good. But when we went through the prior leaderboards, there wasn't a whole lot there. So that's why I'm kind of shy about the proximities and which ones to use, if any. All right, so there's a look at I almost said TVC River Highlands. There's a look at Detroit Golf Club and the Rocket Mortgage in a raw data sense. Last thing we're going to do, let's move to the early look file. This is performance, specifically at Detroit Golf Club these past 4 years, and how players have performed at some of these metrics that we think are going to be the most important. So, I'm going to jump straight to the putting, as that is the most important shot type here at Detroit Golf Club. So your best putters at Detroit Golf Club: Justin Lauer, it's only been 1 year. Taylor Pendrith, who finished second last year. JJ Spawn, your strokes gained total leader in the 4 years here at the Rocket Mortgage. You see what he's done with the putter. Matt Wallace has been very good. Chris Kirk, Brant Snedeker. Sepp Straka has been very good, but doesn't have the level of finishes the other players have. Hadwin's been good. Jimmy Walker's been good on the greens here. Troy Merritt's been very good on the greens here. Has some good success. Wesley Bryan, Vincent Whaley, not necessarily the high-end finishes, but he's putt fairly well. Tony Finau, your defending champion. So there's a look at the top putters. I'm actually going to skip everything with the driving tab. Let's just go straight to the birdies gained. Who's been the best at just going low, getting a bunch of birdies at Detroit Golf Club? So Taylor Pendrith, again, only 1 year, but he did play well. Defending champion Tony Finau. Stefan Jaeger, 1 for 2, but he's been good at the birdies. J.J. Spawn, Matt Wallace. Lonto Griffin's 2 for 2. Cam Champs played well here, 3 for 4. Lucas Glover, 2 for 3. There's Hideki and Sungjae. Troy Merritt a little bit further down here. Ryan Armour, Sepp Straka, Adams Vinson. Will Gordon has been decent with birdies, but you see he has been atrocious here. So something's not lining up for Will Gordon there. He hadn't played the par 5s particularly well. So there's a look at your top birdies gained players. Let's look at par 4s. Take a look at a couple of different things in there. So we'll start with par 4s in general. Tom Kim. Pendrith again. There's Finau. Brandt Snedeker. Chris Kirk, 3 for 3. Average finish inside the top 20. Adam Hadwin. Sungjae. Troy Merritt. Scott Stallings, 4 for 4. Average finish of a 35th. That's pretty strong. Norlander, 3 for 3. Jaeger. Nate Lashley, your 2019 champion. Richie Wierenski's played the par 4s well. Rogers has withdrawn. I can remove him. Redmond's been pretty good. 3 for 4. Sorry, there you go. 3 for 4. All right. 350 to 4. Par 4s. Your top performers there. Cameron Percy, only 1 for 2, but he's played that length well. Webb Simpson. Ben Martin's played them well, but does not have a lot of success here, as you see. Kevin Tway has played them very well, but does not have a lot of success here. Snedeker, Chris Kirk, Tony Finau. Fratelli's played them well, but not a lot of success. Troy Merritt again. 2 more. We'll look at 450 to 5, and then we'll look at the par 5s. So par 4s, 450 to 5. Tony Finau, Stefan Jaeger. Hardy only 1 time. He didn't play well. Chris Kirk again. Sungjae. There's Keegan coming off his win at the Travelers. He's 3 for 3 here. Average finish of 34th. Doc Redman again. Troy Merritt. Scott Stallings. Adam Hadwin. Last thing. Par 5s. 550 to 600. And your top performers at Detroit Golf Club: Tony Finau, Keegan, Matt Wallace, Lonto Griffin, J.J. Spawn. So you see, look at all these players who have played Detroit Golf Club and played it at a very elite level. They are taking advantage of these 3 shorter par 5s. Now, Robbie Shelton hasn't played well here, but he's been good at that, or at that range of par 5 here. Cam Davis, champion in 2021. English and Whaley, not as much high success, but playing that length of par 5 well. Adam Schenk, 3 for 4. Stefan Jaeger, Sean O'Hare, Sepp Straka, Sungjae. All right, that's going to do it for the Data Dive show tonight. I will bring you back to the best average finish. That's going to do it for the show tonight. Thank you to Richard and Darnell for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Enjoyed the commentary, enjoyed the comments, the questions. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the video, subscribing, commenting. It's always appreciated. Love what I do looking at sports statistics and an in-depth view of sports statistics. Trying to win a little bit of money in the process. In the comments, let me know. Have you fired off any wagers? When the odds boards came out, or odds prices came out this morning, I fired off quite a few names and numbers that I liked. So that, my betting card will be out Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show. Who are some of the players you're leaning towards early on this week in your DFS lineups? Who do you think you might be fading away from? So put all that in the comments. But thanks again for all the support. Really appreciate it. For all the wagers you've made so far this week for the Rocket Mortgage, for all the wagers you're thinking about making this week for the Rocket Mortgage, and until I see you Wednesday night for the DFS Tactics show, may all your bets be profitable.